Triplets sleep outside a bank. A lawyer steps out and reveals their homeless mom's $60 million inheritance. They didn't knock, they kicked. Vanessa Carter's ringed fist hit the door like a gavel, and before Tiana could wipe soap from her hands, the chain snapped. Movers in black shirts swarmed the tiny hallway. Vanessa, flawless in a cream suit, smiled like a weather report. Cool, no mercy. Eugene, stiff as a ledger, counted boxes under his breath. Devon, neck tattoo peeking above his collar, filmed on his phone, grinning. Per the notice, Vanessa sang, you and your entourage are trespassing on Carter property. My babies, Tiana said, reaching back as three small bodies collided with her legs. Malik, Maya, and Micah, 7 years old, 7 kinds of brave, held tight like roots in a storm. Neighbors drifted into the hall, lifting phones. Someone whispered, "Ain't that Darius Carter's old girl?" Another, "He left her with 3. Someone laughed. It stung like salt. "Please," Tiana said, voice steady because mothers learn to steady fire. "Give me a day. You'll nothing," Eugene snapped, pushing a box into her arms. The family decided. "What family?" Malik challenged, chin up like a tiny soldier. Devon zoomed in on the boy. "The family with the last name that matters," he said. Vanessa's perfume, sharp gardenia, filled the room as she plucked the triplets' school photos from the wall, turned them face down, and set them on the floor. "Trash goes out by noon," she said. "Consider this, recycling." They were on the sidewalk in 9 minutes. 9 minutes to fold an entire life. Boxes towered like thin promises. A dress with missing beads drifted into the gutter. Maya chased it, caught it, hugged it like a doll. A long black limo rolled up and stopped without sound. The rear window lowered 2 inches. Margaret Carter's eyes, glacier blue behind designer shades, scanned the curb, landed on Tiana, then slid away. Charles sat beside her, jaw locked, the kind of man who believed a family name could keep rain from falling. The window hummed shut. The limo eased on. "Y'all really going to do this with the kids here?" a neighbor called. "Kids need to learn," Vanessa said, stepping into the sun like a verdict. "Choices have consequences." Tiana felt heat rise in her chest, then settle. She turned to her children. "Breathe," she told them. "With me." They breathed, 4 counts in, 6 counts out. The world narrowed to that small rhythm, the only thing she could control. A mover rolled out the last box, cracked, tape frayed. The flaps fell open. Tiana's grandma's hymnal on top, cracked spine, corner turned down at, "Great is thy faithfulness." Faith, old and stubborn, stared up at her like a dare. "Time," Eugene said, lifting his watch. Tiana squared her shoulders. "We're going," she said. She picked up 2 boxes. Malik took one with both arms. Maya and Micah each took a bag. They walked. City heat rose from the sidewalk in waves. Vendors shouted. A bus sighed. Every few steps someone stared. Every few more someone looked away. When the weight got heavy, Tiana knelt, rearranged straps, kissed foreheads. "We're together," she said. "That's rich already." By late afternoon, they reached the bank downtown, the one with a wide overhang and an ATM alcove that caught the breeze. The guard eyed them, then the kids, then back at Tiana. He didn't smile, but he didn't wave them off. Small mercies count. They stacked their boxes like a fort. Maya spread the rescued dress over the concrete like a picnic cloth. Micah lined up sneakers side by side, order against chaos. Malik sat at the edge of the light, watching, the kind of boy who counts exits without knowing he's learned it. Cars slid past like bright fish. Everything glowed, nothing warmed. "Is Daddy rich?" Maya asked, sudden as thunder. People said. Tiana measured her words. She could hand her daughter bitterness or truth wrapped in gentleness. She chose gentleness. Your father has money, she said, but money ain't the same as wealth. Wealth is who we are when no one's watching. Micah frowned. Then why he never watching? Tiana touched his cheek. Because some people are born with eyes and still don't see. Across the street, a sleek SUV idled, tinted windows hiding a face that didn't belong in the shadows. A notification chimed inside. A viral clip. 3 children on a curb, a woman holding a hymnal like a shield. Somewhere, a man who had once promised forever pressed play, then pressed his palm to his eyes. Under the bank's canopy, the night came soft and honest. The kids curled close. Tiana opened the hymnal. Her grandma's notes were cramped in the margins. Dates, scripture, a grocery list with milk, rice, courage. A corner had a single line. Don't let them write you out. Tiana closed her eyes. In the hum of the city, she heard a different music, steady, stubborn, the kind you stand up to. Sleep, she whispered, and meant, rest. Tomorrow we fight. Morning peeled the city open. Neon blinked out. Buses yawned. Under the bank canopy, Tiana shook dew from the edge of the rescued dress and turned it into a breakfast cloth. The guard slid over 4 paper cups. Hot water only, no tea, but heat is kindness and kindness counts. Thank you, she said. The kids blew steam and giggled like it was soup. Small joy, first thing. A siren far off, a pigeon close by, the ATM's soft hum, sounds layered like a lullaby played backward. Tiana's eyes drifted to the hymnal in the box, to her grandma's note. Don't let them write you out. Once, nobody could have written them out of Darius's life. Back then, the campus green glowed like promise, and he would run to her with a smile that took up the sky. They'd split lemon pepper wings in the student union and dream in loud colors. Her daycare business, his construction company, a house with a porch big enough for truths. I'm going to put your name on everything, he'd said, tapping her knuckles with his fork handle. Tiana Johnson Carter, strong as a drumline. He meant it then. But promise is a blade if you hold it wrong. The first time she met Margaret Carter, it was in a living room that smelled like money and lemon oil. Charles poured bourbon and never offered her water. Margaret's smile didn't touch her eyes. She measured Tiana like fabric. We raised our son for a certain life, she said calmly, and you don't fit it. Darius squeezed Tiana's fingers. Mama? Margaret slid a folder across the glass. A hush contract. Stipend today, silence forever. Charles spoke without looking at either of them. Sign it, Darius, or your trust ends tonight, he signed. He called Tiana afterward from his car, breath shaky. I need time, he'd whispered, just a little. Then time became distance, and distance became absence, and absence became the kind of silence that eats. Now, beneath a bank awning, Malik leaned into her side. Ma, do we got a dad? She kept her voice gentle, even. You have a father, she said. Whether he acts like one is his choice. Maya's brow wrinkled. Is he rich like the people on TV? Maybe, Tiana said, but money can't buy the truth. Micah traced letters on the concrete with a finger. What's the truth? That we're us, she said, and that's enough to start. She thought of Grandma's funeral, simple church, folding fans, a choir that sang like sunrise. Vanessa stood in the back in a white suit, pretending grief, inventorying faces. A week later came the cold smiles, the notices, the movers. When Tiana replayed it now, the timing clicked. The Carters didn't just want her out. They wanted her erased before anybody read a will. A van eased to the curb. Pastor Ruth stepped out, all sunflower scarf and purpose. Morning, baby, she said, eyes soft, but not pitying. I saw the video. You and the little ones okay? We breathing, Tiana said. That's a start. Pastor Ruth handed her a card. Shelter intake hours. A bed. Showers. A place to exhale. Pride is heavy, she added. Let me carry some with you. Tiana nodded, throat tight. We'll come this afternoon. Across the street, a black SUV idled. Behind the glass, a man gripped a steering wheel like it could confess. Darius watched his children sip heat from paper cups and felt the years he'd sold pressing down on his chest. His phone buzzed. Margaret, do not approach. He put the phone face down and didn't move. Tiana dabbed on a little lip gloss from a cracked tube, the kind of armor a woman can afford. She packed the hymnal last. All right, crew, she said, standing. We got places to be. Where? Malik asked. To be seen, she said, and to make sure our names stay where they belong. The bank doors sighed open, cool air kissing sunburned faces. The guard from last night, broad-shouldered, soft-eyed, nodded once. His name tag read, Leon. Y'all can sit over there, Leon said, chin tipping toward a quiet corner near the vending machines. Long as you keep it peaceful. We will, Tiana said. Thank you. The triplets moved like a practiced crew. Maya smoothed the rescued dress across 2 chairs to make a clean perch. Micah lined their shoes in a neat row beneath. Malik dragged the lightest box within reach and sat on it like a lookout. An elderly woman in a flowered hat stopped, studying them with the exact kind of gaze that sees and doesn't pity. I'm Miss Pearl, she said, opening a paper sack. I got too many biscuits for one person. She winked. God been overfeeding me for years. Maya's eyes went wide. For real? Real as sunrise, Ms. Pearl said, pressing warm-wrapped biscuits into small hands. She slipped a bus card to Tiana. It reloads at the kiosk. Use it till it don't, her fingers squeezed Tiana's. A quiet transfer of courage. Across the lobby, glass elevators whisked suits to the upper floors. A laugh tinkled like ice in a glass. Vanessa Carter, cream suit crisp, stepped out of a meeting room with Eugene trailing, tablet hugged to his chest. Devon, in a bomber jacket, despite the heat, swaggered behind them, phone held up for angles. Vanessa's voice carried, easy and sure. When the estate accounts are consolidated, we'll close anything extraneous. She didn't look toward the corner where Tiana sat, but the word floated there and settled like dust. Eugene murmured, Friday's the target. Signatures will be in place. Devon snorted. If anybody causes trouble, I'll handle it. Leon's jaw ticked. He shifted his stance, half a step closer to Tiana's corner, without making a show of it. On the mezzanine rail above, a man in a navy suit watched the scene unfold. Mr. Harris, vice president, retail banking, collar slightly wilted, eyes more human than the lobby's marble deserved. He'd seen the eviction video late last night. He'd also seen a name cross an internal alert this morning, Tiana Johnson, flagged by the estate services team in a way that smelled wrong to a man who'd grown up on his grandma's porch, listening to stories about right and wrong. He came down the stairs, not rushing, not slow. Ms. Johnson? He asked, as if he were simply practicing good service. Tiana stood, shoulders square. Yes, sir. He glanced at the children, then back at her. If you have a few minutes tomorrow morning, I'd like to review something with you. Quietly, he slid a business card toward her. Caleb Harris, VP, face down, as if it mattered that the gesture look ordinary. Vanessa's gaze snapped over, smile freezing for a heartbeat. Then she smoothed it. Caleb, she cooed, we'll need the private conference room again at 2. Family matters. Of course, Mr. Harris said, without looking away from Tiana. Malik angled his body between them, small and fierce. Mr. Harris noticed, respected it. Devon drifted closer, phone up. Smile for the camera, he sing-songed. Leon stepped in, palm up. "Phone's off in client areas, sir." Devon rolled his eyes but backed away with a grin sharpened to cut. Outside, the city throbbed. Horns, heat, the rumor of storms. On a job site across the street, a construction foreman shaded his eyes, squinting at the bank's glass. Marcus Wright had seen the video at 3 a.m., heart punching his ribs. Now he saw her in real time, the girl he once skipped chemistry with, standing with 3 kids who wore her stubborn chin. He pulled out his phone, typed and erased, typed again. "I'm here if you need me." He hit send to a number he wasn't sure still lived in her phone. Inside, Maya finished her biscuit and licked a crumb from her thumb. "Mama," she whispered, "that lady smell like lies." Tiana didn't laugh. "Trust your nose, baby." Mr. Harris lowered his voice. 10 a.m. tomorrow, he said. "Ask for me at the desk. Don't come with company." Tiana nodded, slipping the card into the hymnal like it belonged there. "We'll be there." Ms. Pearl patted her hat and shuffled off, leaving behind the gentle wake of lavender soap. Vanessa, Eugene, and Devon glided into the elevator and vanished on an exhale of cold air. Leon cleared his throat. "Shelter bus stops out back on the half hour," he said to the kids, not looking at Tiana in case pride had ears. "Driver's name is Roy. Tell him Leon said to take the long way, gives a person time to breathe." Tiana gathered the children, the box, the hymnal. Mercy had a shape today: paper cups, biscuits, a card with a name, the space to sit without being shooed. "All right, crew," she said, voice steady as the note Grandma used to hold on Sundays. "We movin'." They stepped back into the heat. The city swallowed them. Somewhere behind tinted glass, a man who'd traded love for a last name watched them go and realized names can't keep the rain off, after all. Tomorrow had an appointment. Tonight they had a bus to catch, and a place to be seen that wasn't a sidewalk. The shelter sat in a brick church whose windows wore colored light like armor. Pastor Ruth met them at the side door with towels and a smile that didn't ask for anything back. The triplets raced to the bunks, 3 narrow beds pushed together so they felt like one. Tiana signed forms with a hand that trembled only when nobody was looking. She tucked the hymnal beneath her pillow. "Don't let them write you out." Night brought a coolness the day couldn't find. Street sounds faded to the hush of prayers and distant trains. Tiana stepped outside to breathe. The moon had a cracked plate look, used and loved. A black SUV idled at the curb. The driver's door opened and Darius climbed out, hands empty, face full. No entourage, no last name to hide behind. "T," he said softly. "Please." She didn't move. "Don't call me like you remember." "I do," he said. Every day you chose them," she cut in. "That's the math." Her voice stayed low. There were sleeping babies behind her. The children had crept to the door. Malik blocked his sisters with his small body, eyes fixed on the man it should have been safe to run to. Maya peered around him. "Is that our dad?" Tiana didn't answer. She didn't need to. Darius's face did it for her. Hope, horror, hunger, for time he couldn't buy back. Marcus turned the corner then, arms full of blankets, paint on his forearm like a badge of honest work. He slowed, taking in the tableau. "Everything all right, T?" Darius straightened. 2 men, same street, different histories. Sparks looked for tinder. "It's fine," Tiana said quickly. She took the blankets, brushed Marcus's knuckles in a thank you that said more. "We good?" Darius swallowed. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here to make things right." "Then start by letting us sleep," Tiana said. "Come back when your spine isn't on loan." His phone buzzed. "Margaret, do not engage. Do not embarrass us." He silenced it. For once, he looked at the kids. I'm sorry." "Sorry is a word," Malik said. We need a dad. Darius nodded like a vow he hadn't earned yet. I hear you. Pastor Ruth opened the door wider. Visitation's over, she said kindly, firmly. We protect peace here. Darius backed away, hands raised, as if surrender could be a start. Morning put hard edges on everything. Tiana smoothed her hair, pressed gloss to her mouth like armor, and led her crew back to the bank. Mr. Harris met them at the side entrance, ushering them into a small conference room that smelled like lemon cleaner and secrets. He closed the door, lowered his voice. Ms. Johnson, your grandmother's estate shows a $90 million bequest earmarked for you. 2 documents waive your claim. He slid copies across the table. Both appear forged. The number sat in the air, big as a bus. The triplets didn't flinch. They only watched their mother's face. Tiana kept her voice even. Can it be fixed? With evidence, he said. I'll help you get it to the right hands. Hands like hers, clean. Hands like theirs, dirty. As they left, Vanessa, Eugene, and Devon stepped from the elevator like a storm front. Vanessa's smile was a blade. Caleb, conference room at 2, family matters. In a minute, Mr. Harris said. Devon bumped Tiana's shoulder just enough to say he could. Malik stepped forward, chin up. Leon the guard appeared from nowhere, an anchor in a dark suit. The Carters drifted away, but not far. In the garage, concrete turned footsteps into drums. Mr. Harris headed for his car, briefcase hugged close. A sedan ghosted beside him. Eugene's window slid down. You like your job, Caleb? Eugene asked softly. Vanessa leaned across him, perfume sharp. Don't play hero. Heroes die broke. Devon grinned from the back seat. Accidents happen in dark places. Mr. Harris didn't blink. So do arrests. He raised his phone. Its red light blinked, recording. The sedan slid off into shadow. He called a number he'd never used before. Detective Brooks, Caleb Harris, First Central. I'd like to report intimidation tied to an estate fraud. Meet me at the precinct at 4. A woman's voice said, steady as steel. Bring everything. Outside, Tiana hugged the hymnal to her chest. They're scared, she told her children. How you know? Micah asked. Only scared lions roar that loud, she said. They walked toward the shelter bus stop. Lines were drawn now, on pavement, on paper, in hearts, and for the first time in a long time, Tiana felt the ground under her feet choosing her back. Tomorrow had a court date coming. Tonight she had 3 hands to hold and a name nobody could erase. Morning at the shelter moved like choir practice, call and response. Pastor Ruth's voice, breakfast, metal trays answering back. The triplets learned the rhythm quick, make beds, wash faces, say thank you even when pride bites. An elder with a yellow head wrap slid into their orbit. I'm Miss Dolores, she said, eyes laughing even when her mouth rested. She showed Micah how to fold $1 into a tiny shirt, showed Maya how to hum harmony under a melody, told Malik, if you walk like you belong, doors forget to close. She pressed 3 peppermint candies into 3 small hands. For courage, she said. Courage sometimes tastes like sugar. Tiana walked them to their new school 2 blocks over. Hall floors echoed sneaker squeaks, and Monday. A black teacher with locks, Miss Grant, knelt to the triplets' height. You're safe in my room, she said, like a promise she'd fight for. Paperwork crisped under Tiana's pen. She wrote their names like spells. At recess, a boy in a brand new jersey said too loud, Ain't y'all the bank kids? His friend laughed like a dare. Malik stepped in front of his sisters, shoulders small and squared. Say it again, he warned, voice low. The boy did. 1 shove, a stumble, a scuffle like summer thunder. Whistles, hands, office. The principal called the shelter. Tiana ran the 2 blocks with her pulse in her throat. Malik sat in a plastic chair, lips split, eyes dry. "He called us trash," he said. "I ain't trash." "You're not," Tiana said, hand on his cheek. "You're my son." Ms. Grant stood in the doorway, fire banked. "We'll address the bullying," she said. "All of it." The principal cleared his throat and marked a warning, the cheap kind of justice that always costs extra later. Tiana signed, kept her back straight. She clocked in at the hotel that evening. Night shift. She turned rooms from stories back into squares, wiped away other people's fingerprints, made beds tight enough to bounce a quarter, found a diamond earring under a chair, and turned it in because she could only afford the kind of wealth that lets you look in mirrors. At midnight, the world hushed. At 4, fatigue made the hallways tilt. She pushed her cart to the elevator and whispered to herself, "Milk, rice, courage." The hymnal's words lived in her mouth now. When her shift ended, the bus stop bench held her like a small forgiveness. She closed her eyes for one blink too long. The night slid under. She woke to an EMT's gentle touch and sirens murmuring like scolded bees. "Just dehydration," the nurse said later, giving her juice with a straw. "And a little too much carrying the world." At the nurse's station, a billing screen blinked, "Paid in full." The clerk frowned, checked a note. "Covered by a third party," she said. In the hallway, a man in a grey cap lowered his head and kept walking. Darius's hand shook where he'd signed. He didn't go in. He didn't think he had the right to watch a woman sleep who'd had to stay awake for 3. Back at the shelter, the morning hymn broke early. No call for breakfast. Instead, Pastor Ruth stood with a softness that meant hard news. "Family," she said, "the Lord called Miss Dolores home last night." Silence swelled and popped. Maya pressed her peppermint so hard it melted in her palm. Micah held his tiny money shirt like a flag. Malik looked for a wall to lean on and found his mother's side. The memorial fit in the chapel like a secret. A cheap fan ticked time. Tiana spoke when no one else could. "She gave my babies candy and courage," she said, voice steady. "Sometimes that's the same thing." Pastor Ruth's hand found hers. The triplets placed their peppermints on the altar, bright drops in a sea of white flowers. The television over the shelter's front desk spat poison at dinner. Margaret Carter on a morning show clip, diamonds blinking, grief curated. "Our son was targeted by a woman who refuses to move on," she said smoothly. "We wish her healing." The anchor nodded like a metronome. Tiana clicked it off. "Noise," she told the kids. "We don't eat noise." At the door, Marcus arrived with a box of notebooks and a small security camera in his other hand. "For homework." "For safety," he said. He installed the camera above the shelter wing, hands sure, jaw tight. "Anybody touches y'all, we'll see." Her phone buzzed. "Mr. Harris, met with Detective Brooks. Your case is open. Bring what you have." She slid the hymnal into her bag, like a weapon carved from Sundays. That night, sleep came hard. Grief and grit wrestled on the same pillow. The triplets whispered under shared blankets about peppermint angels and cafeteria justice. Tiana stared at the ceiling and spoke to the woman who'd taught her how to stand, without becoming stone. "We won't let them write us out," she said. Outside, a black SUV idled across the street. Inside it, a son who finally chose to be a father stared at the shelter's lit window and rehearsed apologies he couldn't outsource. Somewhere uptown, a matriarch sharpened her smile on a camera lens, and in the middle, between money and mercy, a mother counted breaths and gathered tomorrow in her hands. The bank's back office looked like order had a heartbeat. Beige walls, precise clocks, blinds that sliced the sun into quiet bars. Mr. Harris rolled a whiteboard from the corner and clicked a marker open. Lines leapt between boxes as he drew, steady as a man building a bridge. "Estate account," he said. tapping the first square. Money flowed here after your grandmother passed. Then, he traced arrows, to 4 shells. Eucharist LLC, Northlight Holdings, Glen Harbor Trust, EJM Advisors. He underlined the initials. EJM, Eugene J.M. Carter. Tiana leaned in. How much? 90. He didn't flinch saying it. Million. The number didn't echo, it just sat, heavy and undeniable. The triplets shared a look, Maya's eyes round, Micah calculating, Malik unblinking. Mr. Harris set down the marker. Your waiver letter, he slid a photocopy forward, was notarized by a woman who retired 2 years before this date, and that signature isn't yours. Tiana touched the paper like it could bite. So what do we do? I've already reached out to Detective Aaliyah Brooks, Financial Crimes, he said. She'll need statements, and I recommend we file in probate court today for an emergency hearing. If we move fast, we can freeze movement. Freeze them, Malik muttered, jaw tight. Mr. Harris's mouth twitched into something like respect. Freeze funds, he corrected gently. But I like your spirit. The precinct smelled like coffee that had worked overtime. Detective Brooks met them in a glass-walled interview room, a notebook and eyes that missed nothing. Her hair was braided close. Her badge caught the light and didn't blink. Ms. Johnson, she said, voice low, even. Tell me what they did. Tell me what you can prove. Tiana laid the photocopies down. They wrote me out of my grandma's will. They forged my name. They moved the money. Detective Brooks studied the documents, then Mr. Harris's diagram. You drew this? Yes, ma'am. Good, she said. I like a banker who can teach. She slid 3 blank forms forward and a 4th for Tiana. I'll subpoena bank records today. I'll request camera footage from the notary's former office, and I'll ask a judge for a standing order to keep these accounts in place until we sort truth from noise. She looked at the kids. You 3 are brave. Be careful who you talk to. If anyone you don't know tries to take you anywhere, you yell my name. Micah's eyes flicked up. We don't know your first name. Aaliyah, she said. But yelling Detective Brooks works fine. They practiced it once. It sounded like a promise. Outside, Heat had opinions. On the sidewalk, Devon lounged against a matte black coupe, scrolling. He looked up slow, a smile lazy enough to be dangerous. Look at y'all, he said. Field trip? Tiana shifted the hymnal under her arm. We don't talk to cowards. Devon's smile sharpened. Funny word for a woman living off free beds. Before Malik could step, a truck rumbled to the curb. Marcus hopped down, wearing a tool belt like a second spine. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You got business with them? Or you just practicing being loud? Devon pushed off the car and spread his hands. Just saying hi to family. We're not yours, Maya said, clear as glass. Devon's grin broke, then reassembled. He slid into the coupe, tires chirping as he pulled away. Marcus watched him go, then turned to Tiana. I'm putting a dashcam in your bag. Motion alerts. It's cheap, but it'll scream if anything moves wrong. Thank you, she said. Pride bowed, didn't break. The courthouse buzzed like bees in a jar. The probate clerk stamped forms with a rhythm that could put a man to sleep or wake a city. Tiana signed her name again and again. Tiana Johnson. Not a whisper, not a waiver, a declaration. Emergency hearing, the clerk said, sliding a paper through the slot. Judge Ellison, Friday at 9. Bring any original documents, witnesses if you have them. Tiana exhaled. The air tasted like paper and new starts. In the lobby, the triplets tugged her sleeve. We heard it, Maya whispered. The number. Numbers don't change who we are, Tiana said. They change what we can do. That's different. So, are we rich? Micah asked. We're rich in each other, she said. Money helps people. It doesn't raise them. Malik nodded solemn like a tiny judge. Then let's use it to help. We will, she said, when it's ours. The right way. That night, the shelter TV spat another segment. Margaret Carter on a velvet chair, Pearls saying old money like a second tongue. We are devastated by the harassment of our family during a time of loss, she told a nodding host. This woman continues to invent claims. Pastor Ruth muted it. We don't feed on lies, she said, same as Tiana. The room breathed again. Across town in a dim parking garage, Vanessa stepped into Detective Brooks's path, a slim smile and an envelope thick enough to make a sound. For community outreach, she said. Detective Brooks looked at the envelope, then at Vanessa's immaculate nails. She let the silence sit until it got heavy. Ma'am, she said, if you drop that litter near a sworn officer again, I'll book you twice. Once for bribery, once for being foolish. Vanessa's smile cracked. You people always think you have power you don't. Detective Brooks leaned close enough that perfume turned into a weapon that didn't work. Watch me. Vanessa walked away, trying not to hurry. Back at the shelter, Marcus tested the tiny camera's alert to Tiana's phone. It pinged. She jumped. The triplets laughed. For 5 minutes it felt like a house with a porch big enough for truths. Her phone buzzed again. Mr. Harris, subpoenas served. Keep the hymnal safe. Tiana slid Grandma's book under her pillow and lay back. The city hummed. Somewhere, Eugene refreshed a balance screen with shaking fingers. Somewhere else, Darius stared at a text he hadn't sent. I choose you now, if you let me. Tiana watched her children sleep and whispered to the ceiling, to the woman who taught her how to stand. We're not numbers, she said. We're names. And we're coming for what's ours. Sunday afternoon wrapped the church in fried chicken smells and choir echoes. After service, kids ran loops in the small playground behind the shelter. Rubber mulch under sneakers, laughter skimming the heat. Tiana sat on a bench with Pastor Ruth, the hymnal in her bag like a heartbeat. She was learning how to rest while still ready. A shadow fell across the bench. Darius stood there with a paper sack and no defense but his eyes. He lifted the bag like a peace flag. Chicken and biscuits, he said. No strings. Pastor Ruth took the hint and rose. This yard belongs to forgiveness and to boundaries, she told him, smiling thin as a blade. Don't confuse which is which. She drifted away. Tiana didn't invite Darius to sit. He sat anyway, leaving a respect-sized space. I watched the twins, triplets play, he said, tripping over his own correction. They run like you. We don't run, she said. We move forward. Across the yard, Malik saw the man on the bench and stiffened. He corralled Maya and Micah with shepherd hands and marched them over. He stopped inches from Darius's knees. You here for real or for a minute? For real, Darius said, and let the words land where they could bruise him. Maya tilted her head, that truth-teller angle. Are you our dad? She asked, loud enough to make other heads turn. Silence shuffled its feet. Children always ask the question adults spend checks avoiding. Yes, Darius said. The ground didn't open, the sky didn't fall, but a hinge somewhere shifted. Micah frowned. Then how come you weren't here? Darius swallowed. Because I was a coward who listened to my mama's money instead of my own heart. He looked at Tiana when he said it. I'm sorry. Sorry is a start, Malik said. You got more? Whatever it takes, Darius said, voice low. Tests, papers, showing up. All of it. Tiana exhaled through her nose. Mercy tried to climb the fence. Caution kept a hand on its belt loop. We don't do midnight promises, she said. We do receipts. Then let me give you one, he said. He pulled a folded card from his pocket. Mr. Harris connected me with a lab, paternity test. Today, the clinic smelled like lemon and old magazines. A nurse swabbed cheeks with the certainty of someone who'd seen more families built than broken. Malik went first, chin up. Maya made a face and giggled. Micah watched procedures like he could take them apart and put them back better. Darius sat last, jaw clenched, eyes soft. Results by morning, the nurse said. We'll call both numbers. She handed Tiana a copy of the chain of custody form. Receipts. On the sidewalk, a car slowed. Vanessa rolled down the window, phone angled just right. Well, isn't this sweet? She sang. Eugene rode shotgun, a ledger in human form. Devon slouched in back, filming. Vanessa's laugh poured like bleach. You sure those are yours, Darius? Contractor boys been around? She nodded toward Marcus, who was crossing with a box of drill bits from his truck, unaware he'd been drafted. The rumor leapt like static onto a gossip blog an hour later. Who's the real daddy? Contractor's secret family. Margaret's media friend greased the reposts. Clicks stacked like coins. Marcus read it on his phone and stopped walking. He lifted his head. Across the street, Darius saw the same headline, and his jaw tightened. But he didn't look at Marcus. He looked at his children. Lies travel fast, he said, loud enough for the camera he knew had to be somewhere. But truth outruns them every time. Tiana didn't dignify the rumor. We don't eat noise, she told the triplets again, and kept moving. The call came before dawn. Positive. The nurse's voice was neutral, the kind of professional calm that keeps rooms from spinning. Tiana thanked her and hung up, her hands shaking only once she was alone in the hallway. At 8, Darius stood in front of a morning show backdrop with a host who loved rich people until they cried. A producer held up a sign, smile, then another, sincere. Margaret's text lit the corner of the screen he tried not to see. Denounce, distance, do not claim. When the camera's red dot glowed, Darius did the opposite. Those are my children, he said, voice steady. I abandoned their mother because I was weak. I am going to be their father now, publicly, permanently. The host blinked, surprised he had chosen honesty over branding. Somewhere Margaret's pearl string tightened like a noose around her patience. By noon, Margaret's attorney filed an emergency custody petition, claiming Tiana's instability made the children unsafe. He requested temporary relocation to the Carter mansion, pending resolution. They got Judge Ellison on the docket by 3. The courtroom felt like a throat clearing. Tiana sat with Detective Brooks behind her and Mr. Harris at her side. Marcus slid into the second row, a quiet wall. Darius took the opposite bench, alone. The Carter lawyer rose, silk tie speaking for him. Your Honor, the mother is transient. Sheltered? Pastor Ruth's voice cut in from the gallery, gentle and lethal. And the father admits to poor judgment. The lawyer finished. Detective Brooks stood when called. There is an active investigation into forgery and estate theft against members of the Carter family, she said. Attempting to seize custody contemporaneous with asset consolidation raises concerns about motive. Judge Ellison's eyes sharpened. He turned to Tiana. Ms. Johnson, where are the children currently? In a supervised family shelter, she said. At school. In counseling, federal loved, he turned to Darius. And you? Ready to co-parent, Darius said. Ready to pay support. Ready to obey whatever order you give. The judge breathed out a small sound like patience. Emergency custody is denied, he said. No relocation. Both parties will submit parenting plans within 14 days. Additionally, given the probate timeline, this court will fast-track all related hearings. These children will not be used as leverage. His gavel tapped like a heartbeat that had decided to continue. Outside, microphones leaned like hungry flowers. Tiana tucked the hymnal under her arm and faced sunlight. Darius kept a respectful distance. Marcus stepped up beside her, not in front of her. The triplets burst from the courthouse, holding construction paper certificates from school, character awards. Ms. Grant had passed them out at lunch. "Look, Ma," Malik said, pride bright. "We got receipts." Tiana laughed, real and warm. "Yes, you do," she said, and squeezed all 3 hands at once, then let go so they could run forward on their own. The courthouse steps turned into a stage the second the gavel fell. Microphones bloomed like hungry flowers, cameras craned, voices stacked. Tiana tucked Grandma's hymnal tight against her ribs and angled the triplets toward the curb. Eyes on the van, keys ready. She almost made it. "Gold digger," Vanessa sang, sweeping in on a cloud of perfume and entitlement. The slap landed fast, sharp enough to sting, loud enough to mic. Tiana didn't sway. She just stared, cool as a lake at dawn. A deputy wedged between them. Detective Brooks materialized like steel, wrapped in silk. "Ma'am, step back," she told Vanessa. Flashbulbs chewed the moment, then spat it across the internet with a caption nobody could control. By sundown, the clip had been stitched 100 ways. On Black Twitter, the tone flipped, #protect. Tiana trended under edits that slowed the slap, zoomed the hymnal, froze Tiana's unflinching eyes. Barbershops posted, "We got her." Church ladies posted, "Say less." A local cafe taped the hashtag to the tip jar. It filled twice before dinner. When a young reporter shoved a mic at Tiana in the parking lot, she didn't perform. "I'm a mother," she said evenly. "I'm following the law. I won't trade truth for volume." She held up the hymnal. "And we don't eat noise." The clip was simple, quiet. Then it did numbers because the world was starved for simple and quiet. At the kids' school the next morning, Ms. Grant turned homeroom into a shield. "We stand against bullying," she said, rolling in a cart with poster paper and markers. She let Malik write "Names Matter" in block letters across the top. Maya read a paragraph she'd scribbled the night before. "Being poor ain't a crime. Being cruel is." Micah drew 3 small superheroes holding a book with a note on it. "Don't let them write you out." The principal, catching up to his students' courage, announced an assembly on empathy for Friday. The triplets went to lunch taller. Across town, in a kitchen the size of an apartment, Charles Carter blinked hard at a pain that rolled from sternum to jaw, like bad weather. He grabbed the edge of the marble island and sat before the floor could decide for him. "Margaret," he whispered. Margaret stood in the doorway to the family room, phone pressed to her ear, pearls steady. "Take his blood pressure," she told a housekeeper without looking up. "We can't have sirens." The housekeeper called 911 anyway. Paramedics filled the foyer with competence. They asked Charles questions. He answered half of them. The lead tech looked at Margaret. "Ma'am, he needs a hospital." She smoothed a cuff and nodded once, calculating optics even as her husband wheezed. Cameras caught nothing. Not yet. Back at the precinct, Detective Brooks set down 2 coffees in front of a man whose shirt collar had lost the will to fight. Rashad Keene, junior accountant, had sweat slicking his temples and guilt on layaway. "Immunity for full cooperation," Brooks said, sliding the agreement across. "We already have the shells. We need who pushed the money, when and where the offshores sit." Rashad swallowed, eyes glassy. "Eugene," he whispered. "He used my login, and his. I kept ledgers on paper because I got a grandma too." He pulled a spiral notebook from under his jacket, plus a prepaid phone with 10 numbers starred. Brooks cracked the notebook. Dates marched, arrows pointed, names circled. It sang like evidence. In a dim garage 4 blocks from the bank, Mr. Harris clicked his fob. His sedan chirped. He paused, a prickle along his neck that wasn't superstition. A thin line gleamed under the front bumper where it shouldn't. He crouched, frowned. A shadow slouched from the stairwell. Devon, grin like a bad tattoo. "Funny thing about brakes," Devon drawled. "Funnier thing about cameras," a voice answered. Marcus stepped from a concrete pillar, phone up, red light on. "And attempted murder charges." Devon's grin cracked. He threw his hands wide, then ran. Marcus didn't chase. He called Detective Brooks. Mr. Harris sat down on the curb, hands shaking a little after the adrenaline passed. "Thank you," he said. Marcus nodded, already screwing a $15 dash cam into place beneath the bumper. "Receipts," he said. That night, Darius rolled a suitcase across stone that wasn't his anymore. Margaret waited near the staircase, her silhouette tall enough to cast over the family portraits. "You do this," she said, "and you are not a Carter." He set the suitcase down. "I'm their father before I'm your son," he said. "I was supposed to be both. You made me choose. I'm choosing." The live interview hit at 8. Margaret sat opposite a host she owned twice over, face arranged into sorrow's most flattering version. "We are grieved by our son's confusion," she said. "He will always be loved, but he will have to live with the consequences of abandoning his family." The host blinked. "You mean, I mean," she said, smiling like a winter window. "He's no longer welcome in this house." Darius watched from a hotel room with one suitcase and a bed that smelled like lemon cleaner, the same honesty Tiana scrubbed for tips. He thought of 3 small bodies curled under donated quilts and picked up his phone. Judge Ellison, requesting immediate mediation to set support and visitation. No cameras, no delays. On a quiet street, Tiana clicked her phone dark and set it face down. Number sign, protect. Tiana floated at the top where gossip used to live. The city exhaled with her. She kissed 3 foreheads, whispered 3 promises, and slid the hymnal back under her pillow. Courage tasted like peppermint and paper tonight. Somewhere fires were being lit. Somewhere else, receipts were being printed. And in the middle, where mercy meets backbone, a mother counted her blessings and her battles and found they were the same number. By 9 a.m., the probate courtroom buzzed like a beehive in a glass box. Reporters lined the back, pens cocked. Judge Ellison took the bench with a look that said he'd heard louder storms. Tiana slid into place with Mr. Harris on her right and Detective Brooks behind her, steady as a hand on a shoulder. The Carters arrived as theater, Margaret in winter pearls, Vanessa carved in cream, Eugene pressed into denial, Devon leaning like a comma that dared you to finish the sentence. Darius sat alone at the end of their row, tie simple, jaw set. "Johnson v. The estate of Alma Reed," the clerk called. Names mattered here. The forensic document examiner went first. Dr. Lila Kamara, sleeves neat, testimony cleaner. She projected side-by-side images of Tiana's real signature and the waiver. "The slant, pressure pattern, and rhythm are inconsistent," she said, laser pen flicking. "In my expert opinion, the waiver is a forgery." She flipped to an affidavit from the notary of record. This notary retired 2 years before the stated date. Vanessa's smile stayed, but her eyes blinked once, slow, angry. Rashad Keene followed, palms damp, voice small but true. Detective Brooks walked him through it like a math teacher who wanted you to win. "You kept paper ledgers?" "Yes, ma'am," he said, holding up the spiral. "My grandma used to say, if it matters, you write it twice." Dates, amounts, arrows. Eugene's initials popped like stains that wouldn't wash. Eugene leaned to his lawyer, whispering too late. The lawyer objected, the judge overruled, patience thinning. "Ms. Carter," the Carter attorney said, turning the music sweet, "where were you the day these wires initiated?" "Miami," Vanessa sang. Detective Brooks stood. "Your Honor," she said, "bank keycard logs place Ms. Carter at First Central on that date." She held up the printout. The timestamp glowed like a red light run twice. Vanessa's jaw tightened. "I don't recall." "Careful," Judge Ellison said, tone turning to granite. "Perjury carries its own gravity." Then Darius took the stand. He gripped the rail like it might teach him something. The Carter lawyer tried to lead. Judge Ellison cut him off. "Mr. Carter," he said, "why did you leave Ms. Johnson?" Darius's eyes found Tiana, then the triplets in the second row, between Pastor Ruth and Ms. Grant. He didn't look away. "Because I was a coward," he said. "My parents threatened to cut me off. I signed a hush agreement and I walked. It was wrong." A murmur swelled, then died at the judge's glance. Margaret's pearls didn't move. Her mouth did, barely. Ungrateful. The Carter attorney pivoted to custody, to instability, to shelters. Pastor Ruth stepped forward when called, sunflower scarf bright in a room that fed on grey. "Our shelter is stable," she said. "These children are fed, in school, in counseling, loved. Poverty is not neglect. Cruelty, however." She let the sentence hang where it needed to. From the back, a bailiff passed a tablet to Detective Brooks. She glanced, then lifted a hand. "Your Honor, supplemental exhibit." On the screen, shaky bag cam footage from the shelter gate that morning. Devon, leaning into Malik's space, hissed words clear as a slap. "One wrong step, and you'll wish you'd stayed on that curb." The alert had pinged Tiana's phone. Marcus had forwarded the clip. Receipts had learned to run faster than fear. "Mr. Devon Carter," the judge said, voice gone razor, "you will approach." Devon swaggered. The judge didn't blink. "You will also enjoy my no-contact order with these minors. Violate it and I will see you from the other side of bars." Devon's grin dissolved. He nodded once, tight. Tiana hadn't looked away through any of it. When the judge finally addressed her, his voice softened by a degree. "Ms. Johnson, can you produce the original will?" "I believe so, Your Honor," she said. It was not bravado. It was the kind of faith you inherit from women who write groceries and courage in the same margins. "I'm still searching my grandmother's things." "Then this is the order," he said, gavel a heartbeat. "Within 7 days, produce the original will or a certified copy. In the interim, assets tied to the estate are frozen. No disbursements, no consolidations, no family housekeeping. All parties are enjoined from harassment or intimidation. Court will reconvene 1 week from today." Margaret hissed to her lawyer. Vanessa stared at the floor as if it had betrayed her. Eugene calculated futures that were suddenly shorter. Darius stepped down from the stand and stayed put, not rushing to claim a place he hadn't earned. In the corridor, microphones bloomed again. Tiana kept the hymnal close, and her children closer. She stopped long enough to let a girl from a public access channel ask a question the national shows never would. "What keeps you going?" Tiana thought of peppermint candies and folded dollar shirts, of Ms. Pearl's biscuits and Leon's quiet corner, of Marcus's camera, Mr. Harris's diagram, Detective Brooks's spine, Pastor Ruth's prayers. She thought of 3 small hands in hers. "The truth," she said, "and the people who carry it with me." Outside, the sun hit hard and honest. The city roared. Somewhere, a housekeeper folded a suit into a bag, while an ambulance bill sat unsigned. Somewhere else, a boy practiced saying, "Your Honor," in a mirror he didn't deserve. And in the middle, a mother traced a finger along a margin note, "Don't let them write you out," and set her clock to 7 days. The Carter mansion had a way of making people small. Today, it failed. Darius walked past the fountain that pretended money could sing and went straight to his father's study. Charles Carter sat behind the desk like a judge, decanter to the right, pen aligned with the blotter, a portrait of ancestors who'd never once taken the bus. "Son," Charles said, careful and cool, "make it quick." Darius didn't sit. "I signed a hush contract because you told me a name mattered more than a life. I left Tiana because you made it the price of staying your son." "That ends today," Charles's lips flattened. "We preserve the family." She threatened the line. "She is the line." Darius shot back. "Those are my children." "Your grandchildren." A beat. Something old and tired moved behind Charles's eyes. "You think she loves you?" "She loves what you represent." Darius leaned forward, hands on the desk. "She loved me when all I represented was a boy with a plan and a cheap car." Silence stretched. Out in the hall, clocks kept rich people time. "Return the estate funds," Darius said. "Tell the truth about the will." Or, "I will," the pen clicked in Charles's fingers. His jaw clenched, unclenched. "You don't understand the weight of the name." Darius's voice dropped. "The name doesn't lift you when you fall, Dad." The pen slipped. Charles pressed a hand to his chest. The air left the room. He stood too fast, then sat too slow. Darius moved around the desk, catching an arm that suddenly weighed more than memory. "Margaret!" he shouted. Footsteps. Pearls. Perfume. Margaret filled the doorway, eyes assessing first, concerned second. "Charles?" His head lolled. Breath came snagged and short. "Call 911, Darius said. "Not in this house," Margaret snapped to a houseman. "Discretion." The houseman ignored her. He dialed. Paramedics brought brisk competence, and a stretcher that knew more than it said. Darius climbed into the ambulance. Margaret did not. The doors shut on a dynasty that had run out of words. At County General, fluorescent lights didn't care about last names. A nurse took Charles through swinging doors. Darius stood facing a blank wall so the room wouldn't tilt. His phone buzzed and stopped, buzzed and stopped. Margaret, Vanessa, reporters he didn't owe anymore. A text came from an unknown number. "Praying for him." "Tiana." He closed his eyes. He texted back, "Thank you." 2 words that had to do a lot of work. The doctor came out an hour later, face arranged for bad news. "I'm sorry," she said. "Massive stroke." Darius nodded like it hurt less if you turned grief into motion. He sat. He put his head in his hands. He didn't cry loud. He just came apart quiet. Footsteps approached. Tiana stood there with the hymnal in the crook of her arm, a jacket over her work uniform, triplets at Pastor Ruth's for the afternoon. She kept a little distance, then closed it. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. He swallowed. "I hated him today, and I didn't want him to die." "Both can be true," she said. She sat with him while the machines down the hall hummed a sound that had decided to stop. She didn't touch him. She didn't have to. Presence is a kind of touch. Across town, a different kind of door opened. Detective Aaliyah Brooks slid a warrant across Eugene's desk. Phones, drives, paper. Eugene tried a smile he'd practiced in mirrors. "You people don't understand finance." Brooks nodded at a junior officer. A drawer came out. A go bag appeared. 2 passports, a stack of cash, 3 burner phones, a ledger with codes only cowards write down. "I understand flight risk," she said. "Turn around." Eugene's face went chalk. The cuff sounded like a small decision becoming a big one. On a parking deck 2 blocks away, Devon grabbed Rashad Keene by the shirt and slammed him against concrete. "You snitched!" Security cameras blinked asleep awake. Rashad's voice shook. Leave me alone, man! Devon drew back a fist. Try it, a voice said from the stairwell. Marcus stepped out, phone held up, red light steady. Say hi to Exhibit A. Devon cursed, dropped his hand, and stalked off. Brooks got the footage 10 minutes later. Paper trails, video trails, receipts learning to multiply. At the county recorder's office, Marcus flipped a thin stack of deeds until Grandma Alma's name smiled up at him. The clerk slid a manila envelope across. Original file, she said. Don't lose it. He drove to Alma's old house. Dust motes danced where sunlight found cracks. Floorboards popped like old stories. Marcus ran a palm along the dining room wall, then crouched. Scratches arced near the baseboard. Not random, repeated. He rapped the wood. Hollow. He texted Tiana. I think there's a hidden panel here. We should check it together. She replied, After I tell the kids about Charles, I won't let them hear it from a screen. By evening, Margaret had a camera in front of her and a script under her tongue. My husband is dead, she told a sympathetic anchor. She didn't say stroke, she said stress. She looked at the lens like it was a jury. This woman and her campaign have torn our family apart. Tiana didn't answer a single request. She shut off her phone. She sat cross-legged on the shelter floor with 3 children who deserved the truth. Baby, she told Malik, Maya, Micah. Your granddaddy passed today. He made choices I don't agree with, but he was your blood. Maya's eyes welled. Micah leaned into her shoulder. Malik's jaw set, then softened. We don't clap for death, he said, repeating something his mother had never said out loud, but had taught him anyway. No, Tiana said. We honor life by how we live it. She set the hymnal on the blanket, thumbed to the corner where Grandma Alma had written her small, stubborn command. Don't let them write you out. Tomorrow they'd meet Marcus at the old house. Tomorrow they'd knock on wood and see what secrets answered. Tonight, she tucked 3 heads under one quilt and watched them breathe. Outside, sirens wailed, then faded. In a cell, Eugene counted hours. In a mirror, Devon practiced a smile that didn't feel natural anymore. In a hotel chair, Darius held a paper cup of chapel coffee and said goodbye to a man he loved and resented in equal measure. Fault lines had opened. Some families fall through. This one was learning to build bridges. The clock on the wall said 5 days. The truth would have to move faster than grief. Alma Reed's house breathed like an old choir, floorboards humming, windows sighing in time with the heat. Dust motes hung in the light like notes not ready to land. Marcus eased the front door shut behind them and set a toolbox by the stairs. Tiana stood in the living room with Grandma's hymnal pressed to her ribs, the triplets close and bright-eyed. 4 days, she said softly. Let's listen to what she left us. They listened. The house talked in its own language. Radiator ticks, settling cracks, the hush that comes after laughter moves on. Micah drifted to the corner where Alma's Singer sewing table lived, under a faded crocheted runner. He ran a finger along the wood and frowned. These scratches ain't random, he murmured. They like arrows. Arrows? Maya echoed, crouching beside him. Micah traced them, 3 short gouges pointing at the seam where the table leaf folded down. Grandma left road signs. Marcus flipped the leaf. Nothing obvious. Tiana thumbed the hymnal, the way you do when the Bible won't answer straight on. A penciled note she'd never noticed winked at her from the back cover margin. Singer's elbow. She looked at the Singer emblem, then slid her hand under the metal arm. The machine's elbow. Her fingertips bumped something taped there. She peeled free a tiny brass key. Baby, she told Micah, kissing his temple, your eyes are a blessing. Malik planted himself by the front window, keeping time with the street like a watchman. We got company? Not yet, he said, but his shoulders stayed squared. Marcus dropped to one knee and checked the toe kick under the table. Hollow, he said, rapping twice. 4 screws later, a panel came free to reveal a small steel lockbox sunk into the floor. He held up the key. You want to do the honors? Tiana slid the key into the lock. It turned with a sound like a door that remembered being opened. Inside lay a red-ribboned document tube, a cloth bundle, and a sealed envelope with her name, Tiana, in Alma's careful hand. Her breath stuttered. Grandma. She lifted the ribboned tube first. The parchment inside crackled like old paper wants to live. Blue seal, raised stamp, last will and testament of Alma Reed. The ink made a path that led straight to her, bequeathing the remainder of my estate to my granddaughter, Tiana Johnson. No waivers, no coy language, names, dates, a notary seal that hadn't retired before it signed. Micah bounced on his heels. Is it real? It's as real as breath, Tiana whispered, tears finding her without asking permission. She slid the will back into its tube with gentle hands. Maya pointed at the envelope. Read it. Tiana broke the seal. Alma's script stood up straight. Baby, if they turn you out, turn inward. The truth sits in the floor. Don't let them write you out. Put this where the law can keep it, and where God can see it. If they roar, it's because they scared. Keep walking. A small card fell from the fold. 23-7-14. Marcus cocked his head. Safe combo? Or psalm numbers, Malik said, because Ms. Grant had made the psalms feel like letters from cousins. Tiana tucked the card into the hymnal, because you carry guidance where you keep your spine. Marcus lifted the cloth bundle. Inside lay letters, a stack bound with twine. To the church, to Pastor Ruth, to Tiana when it gets loud. Tiana slid that last one into the hymnal too. There'd be time later to hear Alma's voice straight against her ear. Tires whispered outside. Malik stiffened. Black Coupe, he said. The bell of trouble you learn to hear before you learn scales. They had seconds. Vanessa swept through the gate in a cream suit that had never known sweat. Devon cut the engine and climbed out slow, smile like a pocket knife. Afternoon, family, Vanessa called, stepping onto the porch as if deeds burned her name into the wood. Cleaning out? How thoughtful Marcus moved without fuss, sealing the lockbox panel back in place, then palmed the ribboned tube into his backpack. Tiana slid Alma's letter and the card deeper into the hymnal, then tucked the book into the waistband at the small of her back. Maya grabbed Micah's hand. Malik planted his feet wider. Vanessa crossed the threshold, eyes skimming, calculating. We'll take what belongs to us. It don't, Malik said, before Tiana could speak. Devon drifted toward the sewing table, fingers reaching. Marcus stepped between him and the floor seam, smile thin. Contractor tip, he said. You pull a panel in a house that ain't yours. That's burglary. Devon's nostrils flared. You ain't the law. No, a voice said from the doorway behind them. I am. Detective Aaliyah Brooks filled the frame like an answer to a prayer somebody had already said. Marcus's dash cam had pinged her the second the coupe turned onto the block. Got a call. Thought I'd drop by. Vanessa rearranged her face. Officer, we're simply retrieving family documents. Brooks's eyebrows did not move. With a pry bar? Devon eased the tool back into his jacket like it was shy. Ms. Johnson, Brooks said, eyes flicking to Tiana. You have something to place into chain of custody? Tiana nodded, and with motions that honored paper-like people, removed the ribboned tube from Marcus's pack and set it gently into an evidence bag Brooks unfolded. The room exhaled. Truth had touched the law. Vanessa's smile cracked. You can't just. I can, and I did, Brooks said. You are free to file motions. In the meantime, step back. Devon took a half step anyway. Marcus didn't, neither did Malik, who found himself as tall as he needed to be for half a second. Devon sneered, then laughed like it could put the moment back where he wanted it. It didn't. "Kid's truck," Marcus said, keys already up. "Back seat." Now Maya tugged Micah. Malik backed out last, eyes on Devon the whole way, like you watch a dog that smiles too much. Tiana moved with them, hymnal safe, letters safe, card safe. On the porch, she paused long enough to look Vanessa in the eye. "You left us on a curb," she said, voice even. "Now you can watch us walk through a door." They climbed into Marcus's pickup. He pulled away slow, no flourishes, just control. In the side mirror, Devon threw his hands up. Vanessa hissed something that made her pretty ugly. A block away, Mr. Lewis, the neighbor with the barber's chair on his porch, waved them down and pressed a cold bottle of water into each small hand. "I seen folks try and fail in that house," he said. "Y'all did something different." "You listened. Always do," Tiana said, voice soft, full. At the precinct, Detective Brooks signed 3 pages and time-stamped 2. "This will be under lock tonight and under Judge's nose in the morning," she said. "I'll have a courier deliver certified copies to Judge Ellison and to you. Keep that hymnal close and stay moving smart." 3 days, Tiana said, shoulders dropping for the first time in weeks. "We can make 3 days." Back at the shelter, the kids used their water bottles like tiny trophies, clinking plastic on plastic. Pastor Ruth folded Tiana into an arm that had lifted a lot and never looked heavy doing it. "You look like a woman who found what she was promised," she said. "I did," Tiana answered. She opened Alma's smaller letter when the triplets slept. "If it gets loud, read this quiet," it began. "You don't have to be louder than a lie. You only have to be longer than it. Love, Alma." Outside, a shadow caller rang Margaret with news she already knew. Inside a coupe, Devon ground his teeth and planned a sprint he wasn't built to finish. And in a chain of custody locker, a ribbon glowed red against grey steel, waiting for the morning when a judge would read it into a record nobody could edit. 3 days, then the house could stop whispering and start singing again. The ribbon went from steel grey locker to walnut bench, like a hymn carried from pew to choir loft. Judge Ellison slid on reading glasses and unfurled the tube with a care that turned the whole room reverent. The blue seal winked. The notary stamp dated right. The signature in Alma Reed's square, sturdy hand. He read aloud the line that mattered. "The remainder of my estate to my granddaughter, Tiana Johnson." Sound left the courtroom for a breath. Then it came back as a rustle. Reporters shifting, a throat cleared, someone's whispered, "Thank you, Lord," from the gallery. Margaret sat statue still, pearls frozen at her collarbones. Vanessa stared at a middle distance that had stopped cooperating. Eugene counted futures and found fewer than before. Darius closed his eyes and let his shoulders drop like a man who'd been holding up a house that wasn't his. On the basis of original instrument and authenticating testimony, Judge Ellison said, "This court accepts Ms. Reed's last will and testament as valid. The prior waiver is void due to persuasive evidence of forgery. Estate assets remain frozen pending a restitution schedule." He tapped the gavel once, not unkind. "We reconvene for remedies on Friday." Outside, microphones bloomed. Tiana kept the hymnal under her arm like a spine and took exactly 2 questions. "What do you say to the Carters?" a reporter asked. "That I'll use what my grandmother left me the way she taught me," Tiana said, "to hold us up and to lift others." "Are you angry?" "I'm busy," she said. "Anger doesn't build." They were halfway to the curb when Detective Aaliyah Brooks's phone vibrated. She glanced, jaw tightening. "Bench warrant just signed," she told her partner. "Devon Carter, intimidation of a minor, attempted tampering, attempted burglary, Move sirens bloomed 2 blocks over, the city's arteries dilating. A matte black coupe peeled from a curb in a spill of sound. Brooks's unmarked slid in behind, lights flashing. "Unit 7 in pursuit," her partner radioed. "Southbound Peachtree, speeds increasing." Inside the coupe, Devon's hands jittered on the wheel. His mind bounced between headlines and an empty chair at a table he had never been invited to sit at. He cut hard around a delivery truck, clipped a mirror, cursed. In the back seat, panic wore his face. Brooks drove like facts, steady, relentless, leaving no room for lies. "Ease him," she told her partner. "No glory chase. Keep eyes." Devon punched the gas. A construction barrier leapt into view where the city had been remaking itself all summer. Orange drums, rebar, a trench behind chain link. He yanked the wheel, overcorrected, kissed the curb at speed. The coupe fishtailed, skidded sideways, struck the median with a noise like a book slamming shut. Airbags bloomed white, steam hissed. A curl of smoke licked the hood and turned into a tongue. Brooks was out of the car before her door finished bouncing. "Devon!" she shouted, sprinting. Her partner jammed a fire extinguisher under the crumpled hood seam. The foam fought, then mostly won. Devon coughed, eyes wide and glassed. "I didn't—" he started and then didn't finish. Medics swarmed in a choreography they hadn't wanted to practice. They worked until the street went quiet again, in that particular way that means the body has decided, and words can't call it back. Brooks stood at the edge of the scene, chest heaving, hand on the roof of the wreck. She closed her eyes for 1 second, not at the man he had been, but at the boy nobody had caught in time. "Notify next of kin," she said, voice level. On a courthouse step, Vanessa's phone rang before the rumor did. She listened, blinked once, and composed her face into grief, without sorrow. "Hate finds its own fire," she murmured, and turned the lens to catch her good side. Back at the shelter, Pastor Ruth's office held the triplets while Tiana took a call in the hall. "Devon," she repeated, steady as she could make it. She stayed there a long minute, looking at the bulletin board with flyers for GED classes and a potluck list pinned crooked. When she went back in, Malik read her before words did. "Don't clap for death," he said, the house rule now written on all their bones. "We don't," Tiana said. "We pray for wisdom to stop the living from making the same mistakes." Maya bit her lip. "He was mean," she said, "but he was somebody's baby once." Micah slid a peppermint from his pocket and placed it on Pastor Ruth's desk. "For courage," he whispered, like Miss Dolores had taught him. Across town, a TV studio cooled under lights that had lied for a living. Margaret's media friend cleared his throat. "We'll shape this as a tragedy unrelated to—" "Shape it as Vanessa's failure to manage the situation," Margaret said, voice soft as a blade. "Tragedy has many fathers." "Blame has one." Eugene sat 3 chairs down, pale, watching the floor swallow edges. Later, in Detective Brooks's interview room, he slid an envelope across the table with hands that shook. Offshore access codes, routing numbers, a list titled EJM Pathways. He looked smaller than his suits. "I'll cooperate," he said. "Full. I can't outrun this." "You shouldn't," Brooks said. "Full cooperation buys you daylight when it's time." She signed the proffer agreement and didn't offer comfort she couldn't afford. By evening, Mr. Harris carried a briefcase that felt like vindication to the small conference room where it had started. He set down copies, certified will, court order, a draft restitution matrix. 3 tranches, he explained to Tiana, Marcus, Pastor Ruth, and Darius, who hovered near the door like a man not sure if he belonged. First, to secure housing and safety. Second, to pay legal fees and seed your foundation. Third, after forensic accounting clause, back what moved offshore. We'll keep everything transparent. Receipts, Malik said from his chair, coloring in a superhero with a hymnal for a shield. Receipts, Harris agreed, smiling. Darius cleared his throat. I set up automatic support, he said carefully, eyes on Tiana, not pleading. No headlines, no delays. It's not forgiveness. It's the floor I should have laid a long time ago. Tiana nodded. Mercy shuffled closer to the fence. Floor is a start, she said. Marcus slid a folder across the table. Blueprints, he said. A small rehab project. 12 units on Auburn Avenue. We could turn them into transitional housing for mothers within 6 months, with a crew that cares. Tiana's thumb grazed the paper like it could make walls appear. The Dolores Fund, she said, trying the name and finding it fit. First units there. Pastor Ruth smiled into her scarf. This city will learn what wealth looks like when it feeds people. The door opened on a knock. Detective Brooks stepped in, face composed. I wanted to bring this to you in person, she said, placing a sealed envelope on the table. The medical examiner's preliminary and an update. Judge Ellison will add restitution and victim impact statements to Friday's agenda. Bring your witness list. Tiana nodded. We'll be there. Brooks lingered a beat. Devon, she started, then stopped. We write reports. Y'all write the living. Keep doing that. When she left, Tiana opened the envelope. Legal words, final ones. She folded them back without letting the kids see too much. Death had done what death always does, punished no one and changed everything. Night brought a thin rain that slicked the city and cooled tempers that weren't built for endurance. In a quiet lane behind the Carter mansion, Vanessa stood smoking a cigarette. She pretended she didn't. Smoke curled around a face that had practiced every expression but remorse. On the TV inside, Margaret's PR turned a boy's wreck into a mother's alibi. Vanessa watched, then flicked ash like punctuation, and smiled a kind of smile that starts fires later. At the shelter, Tiana pulled Alma's letter from the hymnal and read by lamplight while the triplets breathed sugar-slow in their bunks. You don't have to be louder than a lie, Alma had written. You only have to be longer than it. Tiana traced the words. We can be longer, she whispered. In the room's soft hum, Darius texted from the hallway. I'll be at the school at drop-off. I won't crowd. I'll carry backpacks if they let me. If they don't, I'll carry quiet. She smiled despite herself. Carry quiet, she typed back. And water. Tomorrow they would plan for Friday. Tonight, they let grief do its short work and left the long work to mercy and receipts. The city exhaled. Somewhere, a judge slept with a red ribbon's echo in his ears. Somewhere else, a matchbook with the Carter crest slid into a cream purse. And in a small room where faith kept its promises, a mother tucked a hymnal under her pillow, like a lock, and turned out the light. Friday dressed the courthouse in thundercloud light and camera lenses. The remedies hearing was set for 10. By 9:30, the gallery looked like the city had come to see whether the truth would get a seat. Judge Ellison took the bench without ceremony, reading glasses perched low like punctuation. We are here on remedies, restitution, and referrals, he said. The will has been admitted. Today we decide what comes next. Tiana rose when called, Mr. Harris beside her with a binder, the thickness of a phone book, Detective Aaliyah Brooks behind them, like a pillar that knew how to move. Across the aisle, Margaret sat wrapped in winter pearls, despite June, face ironed flat. Vanessa wore sharp cream and a smile that had been sharpened sharper. Eugene, pale and smaller in a county windbreaker, kept his eyes on the tabletop. Darius took the end of the row, alone again, on purpose. Mr. Harris, the judge said, Walk me through your plan. Harris flipped tabs that had been loved into place. 3 tranches, Your Honor, he said, voice clean. First, immediate safety and housing for Miss Johnson and her children. Second, legal fees and an initial endowment to a charitable trust, working name the Dolores Fund, supporting transitional housing for families. Third, a larger distribution after forensic recovery of assets, transferred to shells and offshores. He tapped a page. We have account numbers and access codes voluntarily provided by Mr. Eugene Carter under proffer. The courtroom tilted as a dozen heads turned toward Eugene. He swallowed, then stood at his lawyer's nudge. He started, voice frayed. I moved money on orders I didn't question. That's on me. I'm cooperating. Full Vanessa hissed, coward, under her breath. Detective Brooks didn't look at her. She looked at the judge. We have documentary evidence of forgery, wire fraud, obstruction, and intimidation, she said. We are prepared to refer charges. The district attorney's office is ready to accept. Duly noted, Judge Ellison said. He turned to the gallery. I will have quiet. Pastor Ruth stepped forward on a victim impact slot the court had carved out, because sometimes healing needs a microphone. When you turn this mother and her children into a sidewalk spectacle, she said to no one and to everyone, you taught them how to be seen without being fed. We fed them anyway. We will always feed them. But we will not let money make a meal out of people again. Ms. Grant lifted a folder of drawings and essays from her class. The judge skimmed, then nodded. Mark as People's Exhibit 5, he said. On top, a crayon picture of 3 caped kids holding a hymnal shield. Don't let them write you out. Children may address the court, the judge added, gentler. The room softened like a choir catching the right key. Malik stood first, small hands clenching, unclenching. We slept by a bank. They called us trash, he said, chin up. We ain't trash. We're people. We did our homework anyway. Maya squared her shoulders. Being poor ain't a crime, she said. Being cruel is. A ripple went through the benches, like a taut line pulled true. Micah tapped a folded dollar shirt from his pocket and set it on the rail. This for the judge, he said quietly. Miss Dolores taught me how to fold courage. The judge's mouth twitched, not a smile, more a surrender to gravity. Courage accepted. Then Darius asked to be heard. His lawyer had advised silence. He stood anyway. Your Honor, I abandoned Ms. Johnson because I let Margaret and Charles make me small, he said, voice steady because he was finally tired of shaking. I am paying support, and I will keep paying. I am in therapy. I'm not here for pity. I'm here to be accountable, to my children, to the truth. Margaret's lips thinned to a blade. The judge turned to her. Mrs. Carter, he said, you may respond. She stood like a statue choosing to animate. Our family has been targeted by a campaign of... The judge held up a hand. No. We deal in facts, not press releases. Sit, please. She sat. If a pearl string could strangle, it would have. Harris resumed. We request that the court appoint Ms. Johnson personal representative of the estate, approve the interim distribution for housing and safety, and order disgorgement from the shell entities back into the estate pending final accounting. Detective Brooks, the judge said. Your referrals? Filed this morning, she said. The grand jury is prepared to hear counts for conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, witness intimidation, and obstruction. We additionally seek remand of Ms. Vanessa Carter due to ongoing risk and recent no-contact violations. Vanessa laughed once, bright and brittle. You can't. I can, the judge said, voice turning steel. Bailiff, Ms. Carter will be remanded pending arraignment. For the first time in months, Vanessa's face lost its lines. She looked to Margaret for rescue and found ice. Mr. Carter, Eugene, the judge added, your cooperation will be noted at sentencing. Do not mistake daylight for a pardon. Eugene nodded like a man grateful for any kind of sky. The judge leaned back, reading glasses low. Here is the order, he said, and the room held its breath. 1. Ms. Johnson is appointed personal representative of Alma Reed's estate. 2. Immediate interim distribution is approved for housing, security, schooling, and legal fees. 3. The court adopts the restitution framework and orders disgorgement from Eucharist LLC, Northlight Holdings, Glen Harbor Trust, and EJM Advisors into the estate escrow within 10 business days. 4. This matter is referred to the District Attorney for prosecution of criminal counts already enumerated. 5. All prior protective orders remain in full force. Violations will result in contempt. The gavel fell once, like a door locking that needed to be locked. Sound poured back. Reporters fumbling. A cough. Someone sobbing quietly. The deputy touched Vanessa's elbow. She jerked away, then thought better. Wrists presented with a grimace she could not Photoshop. Cameras clicked. The cuffs whispered shut. Margaret didn't rise. She stared at a fixed point on the wall, calculating again, finding less to count. Outside on the steps, microphones snapped open. Tiana held the hymnal where the world could see it. I'm going to buy a home for my children, she said, and we're going to open the first 12 units of the Dolores Fund on Auburn Avenue before Christmas, for families who got written out, for mothers sleeping outside banks. We'll hire from the neighborhood. We'll keep receipts. Do you forgive the Carters? A voice shouted. I forgive like I breathe, she said. Slow, constant, and with boundaries. She tipped her chin toward the courthouse. Accountability is a form of love for a city. We're going to love this city. Loud Marcus stood at her shoulder, not in front. Mr. Harris took questions about escrow and timelines. Detective Brooks gave none. Darius kept a careful distance until the triplets waved him closer. He carried backpacks and water like a man learning how to carry quiet. Ms. Grant hugged her students on live TV and dared any bully to try it again. Back inside, in a side room with bad carpet and better light, the district attorney took statements while a court clerk typed like the day depended on it. Eugene signed his cooperation agreement with hands that had finally decided to be useful. The bailiff led Vanessa down a hallway that turned bright, then gray, then steel. At dusk, the shelter dining room became a newsroom of their own making. Church aunties ladled stew. Men from the barber shop set up a folding table with a hand-lettered sign. Housing donations. Number protect Tiana. Pastor Ruth prayed over a tray of cornbread like it was a treaty. We thank you for truth, she said. Help us carry it longer than a lie. Later, in the quiet, Tiana spread the court order on a bunk and smoothed the creases with her palm. We did it, she whispered to the ceiling, to Alma, to Miss Dolores, to every woman who had put groceries and courage on the same list. Malik tucked the folded dollar shirt under the page like a bookmark. Maya pressed a peppermint to Tiana's mouth. Micah wrote the date in the hymnal margin, Judgment Day. Across town, in a mansion with too many rooms and not enough warmth, Margaret stared out a window, city lights blinking like verdicts. On a warehouse shelf no one had dusted in a decade, a box of papers waited for a match and a bad idea. The city held its breath again, not out of fear, but because it understood something was ending and another thing, sturdier, slower, longer, had begun. The ankle monitor chirped twice like a guilty bird and went quiet. Vanessa set the clipped band on her marble counter, pressed a fingertip to the Carter crest on a matchbook she kept for show, and slipped a flash drive into her bra. Cream suit, flat shoes, no perfume this time. Smoke doesn't like competition. Across town, Detective Aaliyah Brooks's phone lit up. House arrest tamper alert. She was in her car before the second buzz. "Ping it," she told dispatch. The map bloomed with a red dot crawling toward the riverfront warehouses, where the city left things it didn't want to remember. At the shelter, Tiana smoothed the court order into a folder marked Housing, Dolores Fund, and kissed 3 heads before school. Marcus's text blinked. "Site check at Auburn at noon. Bring hard hat." Tiana smiled. Building was a kind of prayer you could touch. Her phone vibrated again. "Brooks, stay put today. High risk." Vanessa cut her monitor. Tiana typed back, "Copy," then added, because this was the truth too, "praying you find her before she hurts herself or anyone else." The Riverside warehouse wore a Carter plaque under its rust. Carter Imports, Archive B. Vanessa slid a key from her pocket. The door coughed open. Inside, rows of bankers' boxes exhaled dust. Old invoices, fake shells, a ledger with edges chewed by years, paper that could still speak if the judge let it. Vanessa moved through the stacks like a curator of her own undoing. She spread the files on a metal table, pulled the matchbook, and hesitated for the first time all morning. The memory that rose wasn't a courtroom. It was a kitchen on a summer night. Teenage Devon, 12 and gap-toothed, laughing at a joke she had already forgotten. She crushed it down. "Weakness," she told the air. "We don't have the luxury." The first match flared. Paper crackled, slow then greedy. Smoke braided up to the rafters and found old dust to dance with. Vanessa coughed, waved the air like it worked. Outside, Brooks cut sirens 2 blocks away. She moved on foot, partner flanking, radio low. She smelled it before she saw it. Sweet, dusty smoke that meant somebody who didn't love what they were burning was still doing it. "Back door," she muttered. The partner peeled left. On Auburn Avenue, Tiana and Marcus walked through the 12 gutted units with Mr. Harris and a city inspector who loved compliance the way some men loved jazz. "Drywall by September," Marcus said, tapping a stud. "Heat before Halloween." Tiana's phone buzzed again. Leon, the bank guard from the first week, now a friend with a security guards network, texted a photo. "Warehouse fire at the river. Carter sign on it." Her stomach stepped into her throat. She showed Marcus. "Brooks there," she added. "Then that's where we go," he said. "To wait by the tape, not inside it." He said it like a man who knew how much help turns into hurt when you cross a line. They drove quiet. The triplets were at school. The hymnal rode shotgun under Tiana's palm, as if Alma could feel heat through paper. By the time they reached the river, a single engine company was muscling hoses off the truck. Smoke muscled back. Police tape lifted in the breeze like a warning flag. Brooks met them at the line, mask around her neck, eyes narrowed against sting. "She's inside?" Tiana asked. "She is," Brooks said. "I called it in the second I got here." She looked at Tiana. "You do not move past this tape." "Understood," Tiana said, and meant it. Inside, Vanessa coughed again, harder. The fire had the table now, then the floor under it started an argument it could win. She grabbed a box with Eucharist LLC scrawled on the side and hugged it to her chest like a life raft, then realized life rafts don't burn on both ends. The exit was 10 steps away, and a city away at the same time. "Vanessa!" Brooks's voice cut through like a clear bell. "This is Detective Brooks." "Where are you?" Silence. Then, small and ragged. "Here." "Follow my voice," Brooks said, stepping into the doorway, heat slapping her cheeks. "You've got a minute before this turns bad and a minute after that before it turns worse." Vanessa stumbled into view at the far end of an aisle, hair wild, cheek streaked with ash, a box clutched like a baby you can't feed. "I'm not going to rot in a cage," she rasped. "I won't give her the pleasure." "Nobody rots when they choose to stand in the light," Brooks said. "Walk to me." "Drop the box," Vanessa lifted her chin. The fire licked something structural, and the building made a noise like a throat giving up. "Everything I have ever done," she said. "They told me to." "And you still did it," Brooks answered, not cruel, just true. "Walk." Vanessa took 2 steps. The ceiling coughed sparks. A beam shifted. Brooks moved in 1, 2, 3 strides, reached, caught Vanessa's wrist. "Drop it!" she barked. The box fell. Papers fanned and curled. Brooks yanked Vanessa forward as the beam came down behind them in slow, terrible grace. Heat roared. They hit the doorway together, one boot over tape, the other still arguing with flame. 2 firefighters grabbed Vanessa under the arms and hauled her clear. Brooks staggered, dropped to a knee, came up swearing softly and alive. EMTs swarmed. Vanessa's chest moved too fast, then not enough. Oxygen mask, hands pressing, voices counting. Fire chewed the doorway behind them like it had been starved, and somebody finally opened a pantry. Tiana stood at the tape with both hands on the hymnal. She didn't step over. She didn't add noise. She prayed with her feet planted. Marcus's hand hovered at her back without touching. After long minutes that counted like hours, the EMT shook his head, gentle and final. "Time," he said. The word folded itself up and laid down. No one cheered. Even the fire seemed to change key, losing a note of hunger. Tiana put a hand over her mouth and let 2 tears make their way without apology. "We don't clap for death," she whispered to the air that still hurt to breathe. "We don't. We try to do better with the living." Brooks pulled off her gloves and looked older for half a minute. "She chose everything and still didn't get free," she said, more to the smoke than to anyone. She put a hand on the tape near Tiana's. "I'm sorry you had to see it. I'm sorry you had to run into it," Tiana said. The media vans arrived late enough to miss the hard parts and early enough to try and make them. A reporter pushed a mic toward Tiana. "How does it feel?" he asked, eager. "To see your tormentor?" Tiana held up a palm. "We're not doing that," she said, voice calm enough to cool. "A mother lost her child. A city lost a chance to see justice do its slow work. We're going to honor life by how we live it." On the far curb, Darius hustled across with 3 small backpacks and 3 water bottles clacking. Ms. Grant had called him from the school when the smoke drifted south. He'd signed the kids out and told them the truth softly. Now Malik looked at the engines like they were dragons you could befriend if you learned their names. Maya pressed her face into Tiana's side, then pulled back and stood up straight. Micah sniffed the air and said, "Old paper," because that's what it had been before it was fire. Darius crouched to their height. "We bring water," he said. "We carry quiet." They handed bottles down the line to firefighters with faces smudged and eyes kind. A captain tipped his in thanks. "You folks opening those units on Auburn?" he asked, recognition traveling fast in a city that talks. "We are," Tiana said. "You'll be invited to the ribbon." "Invite the whole house," he said, waving at the crew. "We like doors that open." Across town, in a beige jail, under fluorescence that flattened everyone the same, Margaret listened to the news over a bolted TV. Vanessa's name scrolled under a stock photo. Devon's had scrolled there days ago. Margaret's face didn't move. Inside something unclipped, she smoothed an imaginary skirt and turned to the wall as if it were a mirror. "You wanted a queen," she murmured to the ghost of a man who had thought money controlled the weather. "You got a widow." By late afternoon, firefighters had drowned the warehouse into a wet skeleton. Brooks lifted a soggy folder with gloved hands, slid it into a bag. "Enough survived," she said to her partner. "Not all of it." "Enough," she turned to Tiana. "Go home," she said softly. "Tell your kids what you always tell them." And tomorrow keep building. Tiana nodded. She tucked the hymnal back under her arm and looked out at the river, brown and moving, taking what it would and leaving what it must. She reached for Marcus's hand with one, and for Darius's with the other, lacing fingers like a bridge. The men glanced at each other over her shoulder and did the small thing that changes bigger things. They nodded. On the ride back, Maya watched smoke make a thin line in the side mirror and said, "I don't want to smell like that ever." "You won't," Tiana said. "We're going to smell like paint and bread and fresh sheets." Like new keys. They turned onto Auburn, where 12 doors would soon have 12 names. On the worksite fence, Marcus had pinned a piece of poster board earlier that morning without thinking it mattered. Wind had ripped one corner. The words still held, "The Dolores Fund, coming soon." That night, the city exhaled. Tiana set out bowls, Darius washed, the triplets argued over who would fold napkins like tiny shirts. After grace, they ate and laughed in a room that wasn't yet theirs, but already felt like it belonged. Later, Tiana wrote a line in the hymnal margin next to Alma's stubborn command, "Don't let them write you out." Under it, she added, "And don't let fire have the last word." The morning after the warehouse fire, the sky was the color of clean linen. No smoke, no haze, just sunlight bouncing hard off rooftops and the sound of a city shaking itself awake. For the first time in months, Tiana opened her eyes and didn't feel the weight of somebody else's anger pressing on her chest. The phone on her nightstand was quiet. The air smelled of coffee drifting in from the kitchen, where Darius had decided breakfast meant waffles. But relief was never a straight road. The deaths of Vanessa, Devon, and the collapse of the Carter line left unanswered questions. Papers half burned at the warehouse, rumors in the city about hidden accounts, and the tight fists of Margaret Carter, still alive and unbroken in her jail cell, meant the family's shadow wasn't finished stretching across Tiana's children. Still, this was a day for forward steps. By 8 o'clock, Marcus had the worksite buzzing. Trucks unloaded drywall sheets, volunteers from the church carried buckets of paint, and kids from the neighborhood leaned over the fence, daring each other to hammer a nail. The signboard, "The Dolores Fund, Homes Opening Soon," flapped proudly in the late summer wind. Tiana stood in the middle of the site with the triplets, each wearing little hard hats Marcus had ordered special. Micah tugged on her hand. "Is this where we're gonna live?" Tiana crouched low. "Not exactly, baby. One of these is for us. The rest are for families who don't have a place right now." Like we didn't, Micah thought for a moment, then nodded. "So everybody gets a room." "Exactly," she said, and kissed his cheek. The inspector, the same man who once threatened to shut the project down, clapped Marcus on the back. "Never thought I'd say this, Carter, but you're running ahead of schedule." "Name's not Carter," Marcus corrected gently. "Not anymore." He glanced at Tiana, and she knew the paperwork was waiting at the courthouse, the legal name change that would put the Carters behind them, once and for all. Later that afternoon, Detective Brooks called. "The city's arranging a closed service for Vanessa," she said. "For Devon, too." "They don't want a circus. You're not obligated to come." "I will," Tiana answered. "Not for them, for the truth of it. My children should know what came before." At the cemetery, the crowd was thin, a handful of Carter cousins with sunglasses and bitterness, reporters circling like crows, though police kept them back. Margaret wasn't there. Jail had her locked down tight. Tiana stood with the triplets at the far end. They clutched her dress hems but didn't cry. Maya whispered, "Are they going to heaven?" "That's between them and God," Tiana said softly, "but we can pray for mercy." Across the grass, a young cousin sneered. "That's the woman they tried to throw out." standing here like she belongs. Tiana lifted her chin. I belong wherever truth needs standing. The cousin looked away first. When the coffins lowered, the wind picked up. Tiana felt a strange release, as if the soil covering Vanessa was also covering a chapter of her own fear. But she also knew funerals don't bury consequences. In her cell, Margaret Carter wrote letters to senators, to bankers who owed favors, even to editors at newspapers she once owned in silence. She used her flawless cursive like a weapon. My daughter's death is not the end of our name, one letter began. This city owes me memory, if not allegiance. Brooks intercepted some of them. Others slipped out. Margaret was still dangerous, even behind bars. By early evening, the shelter buzzed with whispers. A cousin of Devon's had been spotted outside the school. A dark SUV trailed Marcus's truck on the way home. Darius walked the perimeter twice before letting the triplets play outside. This ain't over, he told Tiana quietly. No, she agreed, but nothing worth building is ever safe. That's why it matters. That night, the family gathered around bowls of red beans and rice. Marcus set down his fork. I filed the name change papers today. We'll be the Johnsons from now on, my father's people, hard-working, quiet folk. Tiana reached for his hand. Thank you. Our children deserve a name not stained with greed, the triplets chimed in. Johnson sounds strong. Johnson sounds like running fast. Johnson sounds like us. They laughed, the sound rolling warm through the kitchen. Just as dishes were being cleared, a sharp knock rattled the frame. Marcus froze. Darius's hand went instinctively to the bat he kept by the counter. Tiana pressed a finger to her lips, motioned the kids toward their room. Brooks's voice came muffled through the wood. It's me. Open up relief exhaled through the room. She stepped inside, hat in hand. We pulled the surviving files from the warehouse. Enough to show systematic fraud. Enough to seize what's left of the Carter fortune. It won't be quick, but it'll end up funding things like this project. So Vanessa burned papers for nothing, Marcus said. Brooks nodded. For nothing but smoke. Tiana touched the hymnal resting on the mantel. God's truth always survives the fire. Weeks later, the first unit on Auburn Avenue opened its door. Neighbors cheered as a single mother and her 2 children carried in their bags. The triplets ran ahead with balloons. Tiana cut the ribbon with Alma's scissors, their handles still wrapped in the same ribbon from her grandmother's sewing basket. Reporters snapped photos, but this time Tiana didn't feel like prey. She felt like proof. Brooks pulled her aside. You've turned a tragedy into a blueprint. Other neighborhoods are calling. They want a Dolores fund in their streets. Tiana smiled. Then we'll teach them to build. 2 months later, Margaret Carter was found lifeless in her cell, a stack of unfinished letters on the floor. No note, no drama, just a sudden absence. Some said stroke, others poison. The city didn't investigate too deeply. The Carter legacy was ash now, both literally and in bloodline. When news reached Tiana, she whispered a single line from Alma's hymnal. The proud shall stumble, and the meek shall rise. Then she turned the page and kept reading aloud to her children. Finally, one autumn evening, Marcus carried Tiana across the threshold of their own finished unit. The walls smelled of paint, the floors of new pine. The triplets raced from room to room, arguing over who got the window facing the street. Tiana set the hymnal on a shelf in the living room, its cover worn smooth. We're home, she said simply. Marcus kissed her forehead. And safe. Darius leaned against the doorframe, smiling. And watched, he added. You know I ain't going nowhere. The 3 adults laughed, but the laughter was steady, not nervous this time. By winter, murals bloomed on Auburn Avenue. One showed Alma Dolores, hands outstretched, triplets by her side. Another showed keys passing from one hand to another. Above the doorways, neighbors painted words. Hope lives here. The Carters were gone, their fortune redistributed, their power broken. What remained was not the ashes of their cruelty, but the sturdy beams of new homes and the sound of children laughing in streets once emptied by fear. On Christmas Eve, snow dusted the roofs. Inside their new home, the Johnson family gathered by the tree. Tiana read aloud from Alma's hymnal while the triplets leaned close. Marcus strung lights around the window, and Darius pretended not to hum along with the carols. "Remember," Tiana said softly, "our story isn't about what we lost. It's about what we found when we stood together." Outside, neighbors sang, and the sound rose into the night sky, wrapping the city in a promise that even in the shadow of fire, a new house could rise. And this time, no one was left sleeping outside. Spring came early that year. The last patches of snow melted into the earth around the Auburn homes, leaving behind small shoots of green that curled toward the sun. Children darted through the courtyards, chasing kites and laughter. The air smelled of paint, soap, and dinners carried from one kitchen to another, a neighborhood alive again. On the porch of her own home, Tiana Johnson rocked gently in a chair that once belonged to Alma. The hymnal lay open in her lap, its pages crowded with notes written by 3 generations of women who had refused to disappear. She traced a line with her finger. "Don't let them write you out." Beside it, her own handwriting as answered. "We didn't." The triplets played in the yard, their voices tumbling over one another. Marcus walked the fence line, greeting neighbors with a hammer in his belt and pride in his step. Darius, faithful as ever, taught a boy from down the block how to tie a kite string tight. From the street corner, Detective Brooks watched with a small smile. She wasn't there on duty anymore. She had come because some stories were worth seeing through. When Tiana waved, Brooks tipped her cap, then slipped back into the city. The Carter name faded like smoke in the wind. The fortune they hoarded now funded homes, schools, and clinics. The cousins who once sneered kept their distance. Margaret's letters collected dust in sealed archives. As the sun dipped low, Marcus joined Tiana on the porch. He placed a new set of keys in her hand, keys engraved with their new name. "For our next door," he said, "wherever we open it." Tiana closed her fist around the metal, warm from his palm. "Then let's make sure there's always another door," she whispered. The camera of life pulled back, a street once broken now whole, voices rising, lights flicking on one by one. Not a fairy tale, not perfection, but a testament. From ashes to keys, from sleeping outside to building inside, this was their story, and it was only the beginning. Here comes the end of the story. If I was able to make your day, comment Mr. Hope you made my day.